A billionaire walked into an empty diner at 3 a.m. and saw something that would haunt him forever. A young woman crying over a sink full of dirty dishes, her hands bleeding from scrubbing so hard. What he did in the next 60 seconds would save 2 lives, destroy a business empire, and expose a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of corporate America. Welcome to Stories by Jason. If you're settled in and ready for a good story, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I've got another exciting story coming your way tomorrow, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. Thank you so much for the love and support. You're truly appreciated, and I'm so grateful to have you here with me. The fluorescent lights of Murphy's diner flickered at 3:14 a.m., casting sickly shadows across the cracked linoleum floor. Lauren Martinez stood at the industrial sink, her hands submerged in scalding water that had long since turned her fingers pink and raw. She didn't feel it anymore. She couldn't afford to feel anything except the desperate rhythm of scrub, rinse, stack, repeat. Her shift had ended at midnight. That was 3 hours ago. "You don't have to stay," Eddie, the night cook, had told her around 1 a.m., his weathered face creased with concern. "I can finish up." But Lauren had just shaken her head, forcing a smile that felt like it might crack her face in half. "The extra hours help. I need them." What she didn't say, her mother's oncology bill was due in 4 days. What she didn't say, the insurance company had denied the claim again, the 3rd time in 2 months. What she didn't say, without the experimental treatment, Dr. Morrison gave her mother 6 weeks, maybe 8. So Lauren scrubbed, and when her vision blurred with exhaustion and tears, she scrubbed harder. She didn't hear the door chime, didn't notice the man in the $1,000 suit who'd stopped on the sidewalk outside, staring through the window with an expression caught between recognition and pain. Didn't see him push the door open with the hesitation of someone entering a place they'd forgotten existed. "We're closed," Eddie called out automatically, then paused. "Oh, Mr. Hunt, didn't expect to see you again." Lauren's hands stilled in the water. She turned, water dripping from her wrists, and found herself looking at a man who seemed entirely out of place in the worn-down diner. Alexander Hunt was tall, maybe 40, with gray threading through dark hair at his temples. His suit was rumpled, tie loosened, and there was something in his eyes, a weariness that matched her own. "Eddie," Alexander's voice was rough, unused. "Is the coffee still terrible?" "Worse than you remember." Eddie grinned, already reaching for a mug. "But I'll make it special for you. Been what, 15 years? 17. Alexander's gaze swept the diner, lingering on details. The same cracked booth in the corner, the jukebox that hadn't worked since 1995, the clock on the wall that was perpetually 20 minutes fast. Then his eyes landed on Lauren, still frozen at the sink, and something shifted in his expression. "You should sit," he said quietly, and it took Lauren a moment to realize he was talking to her. "Your hands are shaking." She looked down. He was right. She curled her fingers into fists, trying to hide the tremor, but it was useless. She was so tired she could barely stand. "I'm fine," she managed, "just finishing up." "You're not fine." Alexander moved closer, and Lauren instinctively stepped back, bumping into the counter. He stopped immediately, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. I'm just. When's the last time you slept?" The question was so unexpected, so genuinely concerned, that Lauren felt her carefully constructed walls crack. "I don't. That's not." "Sit down." This time it was a command, but gentle. "Eddie, get her some coffee, and whatever food you have that's still good." He pulled out his wallet, extracting several bills without looking at them. "Keep the change." Eddie glanced at the money. Lauren caught a glimpse of hundreds, and whistled low. "That'll cover the next month of late-night coffee, Alex." "Good." Alexander turned back to Lauren, who hadn't moved. "Please, 5 minutes. Let me buy you a coffee and a conversation." "I don't need charity," Lauren said, but her voice wavered. God, she was so tired. "It's not charity, it's—" Alexander hesitated, and for a moment the powerful businessman facade cracked, revealing something raw underneath. "It's 3 in the morning and I can't sleep, and I'm tired of being alone with my thoughts. So please, sit with me." Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the desperation in his voice that matched her own. Maybe it was simply that she couldn't stand anymore. But Lauren found herself nodding, drying her hands on her apron and following Alexander to the corner booth, the one where she'd spent countless breaks, too tired to go home between shifts. Eddie brought coffee and a plate of eggs, toast, and bacon that Lauren knew wasn't on the menu. She tried to protest, but her stomach betrayed her with an audible growl. "Eat," Alexander said. "Then tell me why you're washing dishes at 3 in the morning when your shift ended hours ago." "How do you know when my shift ended?" "Because I used to work here, 20 years ago before college. The night shift always ended at midnight." He took a sip of his coffee, grimaced at the taste, but kept drinking. "Eddie's right, it has gotten worse." Lauren picked up a piece of toast, her hand still trembling. "Why did you come back?" "I ask myself that every time." Alexander's gaze drifted to the window, watching the empty street outside. I came from a meeting about profit margins and shareholder value and I couldn't go home. Couldn't face that empty apartment and pretend that any of it matters, so I walked, for hours, and ended up here. Must be nice, Lauren said, and there was more bitterness in her voice than she intended. To be able to walk away from your life when it gets uncomfortable. Instead of getting offended, Alexander just nodded. You're right, it is a privilege. One I've earned through luck and circumstances I was born into, but that doesn't make the emptiness feel any different. He leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. So I'll ask again. Why are you here at 3 in the morning, working hours you're not getting paid for, with hands that are bleeding from overwork? Lauren looked down at her hands. Sure enough, there were small cuts across her knuckles, pink and raw. She hadn't even noticed. My mother has stage 4 pancreatic cancer, she heard herself say. The words came out flat, practiced. She'd said them so many times to so many insurance representatives that they'd lost all meaning. The treatment she needs costs $47,000 every 3 weeks. Our insurance keeps denying the claims. They say it's experimental. They say it's not covered. They say a lot of things that mean the same thing. She's going to die, and there's nothing I can do about it. Silence fell over the booth. Eddie had discreetly moved to the far end of the counter, giving them privacy. How much do you need? Alexander asked quietly. Don't, Lauren's voice cracked. Please don't offer me money. I can't, I won't. That's not what I was going to say. Alexander pulled out his phone, his fingers moving quickly across the screen. What's your mother's name? Her doctor? The insurance company? Why? Lauren's voice was sharp with suspicion. Because, he stopped, and when he looked up there was a depth of pain in his eyes that took Lauren's breath away. My mother died of cancer when I was 19. We couldn't afford the treatment. I was working here at this diner doing exactly what you're doing, taking extra shifts, staying late, trying to scrape together enough money to make a difference. It wasn't enough. It's never enough. His jaw tightened. So I'm going to help you, not with money, not directly, but I know people. I know how these systems work, and I know how to make them work for people who deserve it. Who are you? Lauren whispered. Alexander's smile was sad. Someone who wishes he'd had help when he needed it. Someone who has more money than he knows what to do with and no one to spend it on. Someone who just watched a young woman destroy her hands trying to save her mother and remembered what it felt like to be that desperate. He held out his hand across the table. Alexander Hunt, CEO of Hunt Industries, and I'd like to offer you a job. Lauren stared at his outstretched hand like it might bite her. A job doing what? Whatever you're good at, I don't care. My company has 1,000 positions that need filling, but more importantly, he lowered his hand, sensing her hesitation. I started a foundation 3 years ago, the Hunt Foundation for Medical Equity. We help people navigate insurance denials, cover costs for experimental treatments, fund research. It's the one thing I do that actually matters, and we need people who understand what it's like to fight these battles. This is insane, Lauren said. You don't even know me. No, but I know desperation when I see it. I know courage. I know what it looks like when someone refuses to give up even when every logical part of them knows it's hopeless. Alexander's voice softened. And I know that my mother would have given anything for someone to walk into our lives and offer help when we needed it most. Lauren felt tears burning behind her eyes. Why should I believe you? This could be, I don't know, some kind of trap or a scam. It could be, Alexander agreed. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you my card. It has my direct number, my email, and my assistant's contact information. Tomorrow, later today, I suppose, call my office. Ask for Sarah Chen. Tell her you're Lauren Martinez and that I sent you. She'll set up an appointment, she'll verify everything I've told you, and she'll explain the foundation's work. If after that meeting you want to walk away, you can. No strings. No obligations. He slid a business card across the table. But if you want help, if you want to work with us, we'll start the paperwork immediately. For both your employment and your mother's treatment coverage. Lauren picked up the card with shaking hands. It was heavy, expensive cardstock with embossed lettering. Alexander Hunt, CEO, Hunt Industries. A Manhattan address that she knew was in one of the most expensive buildings in the city. This is real, she said, not quite a question. This is real. Alexander stood, leaving several more bills on the table, enough to cover a week of meals, Lauren realized with a jolt. Get some sleep, Lauren, call tomorrow, and please, his voice caught. Let me help. Let me do for you what no one did for my mother. He was halfway to the door when Lauren found her voice. Mr. Hunt. He turned back, one hand on the door. Thank you, she whispered. Even if this is crazy, even if I'm dreaming, thank you for seeing me. Alexander's smile was genuine this time, transforming his entire face. Get some rest. I'll see you tomorrow. The door chimed as he left, and Lauren sat in the booth, staring at the business card in her hand. Eddie appeared with a fresh pot of coffee, refilling her mug without a word. Is this real? She asked him. Alex Hunt? Yeah, he's real. Used to bust tables here while putting himself through community college. His mom was sick, real sick. She died right before he transferred to Columbia. He disappeared after that, but I heard he made it big in tech. Eddie shook his head in wonder. Never thought I'd see him walk through that door again. and certainly never thought I'd see him give someone a chance the way nobody gave him one. Lauren looked out the window at the empty street, then down at her raw, bleeding hands, then at the business card that might as well have been made of gold. "Eddie," she said softly, "I think my life just changed." "I think you're right, kid." Eddie squeezed her shoulder. "Now eat those eggs before they get cold. You're going to need your strength." Lauren ate, and for the first time in months she let herself hope. The Hunt Industries building pierced the Manhattan skyline like a glass needle, all steel and ambition and cold, reflective surfaces that made Lauren feel impossibly small. She stood on the sidewalk outside the main entrance, Alexander Hunt's business card clutched in her hand, and tried to remember how to breathe. It had been 18 hours since their encounter at the diner. 18 hours since she'd stumbled home, collapsed into bed, and slept for the first time in days. 18 hours since she'd allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, miracles could happen at 3 in the morning. She'd called at 9 a.m. sharp. Sarah Chen had answered on the first ring, her voice warm and professional and unsurprised, as if desperate waitresses called asking for billionaire CEOs every day. The appointment was set for 2 p.m. Lauren had 3 hours to shower, change into her only professional outfit, a suit she bought second-hand for her mother's court hearings against the insurance company, and convince herself this wasn't an elaborate dream. Now, standing at the threshold of a building worth more than her entire neighborhood, Lauren felt reality crashing back. What was she doing here? She was nobody, a community college dropout working double shifts to keep her mother alive. What could she possibly offer a man like Alexander Hunt? Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number come up, 47th floor, Sarah is expecting you. A.H. Lauren took a breath, squared her shoulders and walked through the doors. The lobby was a cathedral of glass and marble, filled with beautiful people in expensive clothes moving with the practiced efficiency of those who belonged. Lauren's second-hand suit felt like a costume, her shoes scuffed and desperate. But she kept walking, head high, until she reached the security desk. "Lauren Martinez," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I have an appointment with Sarah Chen." The security guard, a kind-faced woman in her 50s, smiled and checked her tablet. "Yes, Ms. Martinez. Mr. Hunt has you pre-cleared. Take elevator bank C to the 47th floor. Ms. Chen will meet you there." The elevator ride felt like ascending into another world. Each floor number that lit up took Lauren further from everything she'd known, into a realm of wealth and power she'd only seen in movies. When the doors opened on the 47th floor, she stepped into a reception area that looked like it had been designed by someone who believed minimalism and luxury were the same thing. Lauren, a petite Asian woman in her early 30s, stood from behind a sleek desk, her smile genuine. "I'm Sarah Chen. It's wonderful to meet you." "Is this real?" The words slipped out before Lauren could stop them. "I'm sorry, yesterday I was washing dishes at 3 in the morning and now I'm in one of the most expensive offices in Manhattan, about to meet with a man who has a habit of changing lives on impulse." Sarah's eyes twinkled. "Yes, welcome to working with Alexander Hunt. He has a gift for finding people at their lowest moment and seeing their highest potential." She gestured down a hallway lined with abstract art that probably cost more than Lauren's mother's medical bills. "Come, he's waiting." Alexander's office was less ostentatious than Lauren expected, more lived in, with bookshelves covering 2 walls, a standing desk cluttered with papers and tech prototypes, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. Alexander himself stood at those windows, phone pressed to his ear, arguing about something involving Q3 projections and unacceptable variants. He looked different in natural light. Younger, maybe, though the gray at his temples suggested early 40s. The expensive suit from last night had been replaced by dark jeans and a white button-down with sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked less like a billionaire CEO and more like a man who'd forgotten he was supposed to be one. "I don't care about the board's concerns," he was saying, his voice sharp. "If the pharmaceutical division is denying necessary treatments to meet profit margins, we're shutting it down. End of discussion." A pause. "Then they can vote me out. Let them try." He hung up, turning to face Lauren with an expression that shifted immediately from cold authority to warm welcome. "Lauren, you came. You thought I wouldn't. I thought you might wake up and decide I was a crazy person." Alexander crossed to his desk, gesturing for her to sit in one of the leather chairs opposite. Sarah took the other, pulling out a tablet. "I'm glad you didn't." Lauren sat, feeling like she might leave a stain on the expensive furniture. "Mr. Hunt." "Alexander, please." "Alexander." The name felt foreign on her tongue, too familiar. "I need to understand what's happening here. You don't know me. Why would you offer me a job? Why would you help my mother? What do you get out of this?" It was Sarah who answered, her voice matter of fact. "Alexander has a complicated relationship with wealth. He made his first billion by the time he was 35. Since then, he's been trying to figure out what it's actually for. The Hunt Foundation is his attempt at an answer." "The foundation works with people who have been denied medical treatment," Alexander added. We navigate the insurance bureaucracy, fund experimental treatments, cover costs that would otherwise be impossible. 3 years ago, I hired a team of medical advocates, lawyers, and former insurance company employees who were tired of being part of the problem. We've helped over 2,000 families since we started. And you want me to, what, work for this foundation? Lauren's voice was skeptical. I dropped out of community college. I don't have any relevant experience. I'm not a lawyer or a medical professional. No, but you understand what it's like to fight a system designed to break you. Alexander leaned forward, his intensity focused entirely on her. Every single person on my foundation team came from privilege. They're brilliant, they're dedicated, but they don't know. They've never been the person on the other side of the phone being told their mother has 6 weeks to live and there's nothing they can do about it. You have. So I'm what? A token, a mascot. Anger flashed through Lauren's exhaustion. The poor girl you rescued to make yourself feel better. No, Alexander's voice was firm. You're someone with lived experience that we desperately need. You're someone who can look at our processes and tell us where we're failing. You're someone who can connect with the families we're trying to help because you've been where they are. He pulled out a folder, sliding it across the desk. This is a job offer. Assistant Director of Family Advocacy. Salary of $85,000 a year, full benefits, and a seat at every strategy meeting. Your job is to make sure we're actually helping people, not just performing charity for our own egos. Lauren opened the folder with trembling hands. The offer letter was real, dense legal language outlining salary, benefits, responsibilities. $85,000. She currently made $24,000 a year working 2 jobs. This is too much, she whispered. It's market rate for the position, Sarah said gently. We checked. And my mother's treatment. Alexander's expression softened. Separate from the employment offer. The foundation covers it completely, regardless of whether you take the job. I meant what I said last night. I'm helping because I can, because someone should have helped my mother, and because it's the right thing to do. Lauren felt tears threatening again. She blinked them back fiercely. I don't understand you. I don't always understand myself. Alexander's smile was sad. But I know that walking into that diner last night felt like the first real thing I've done in months, maybe years. And I know that if I can use my resources to prevent someone else from feeling the way I felt when my mother died, his voice cracked slightly, then maybe all of this means something. When do I start? Lauren heard herself say. Your mother's first treatment is scheduled for Friday, Sarah said, already typing on her tablet. Why don't you take the rest of this week to be with her? We'll do the onboarding next Monday. Alexander can show you around, introduce you to the team. That fast? When Alexander decides something, it happens fast. Sarah's smile was knowing. It's both his greatest strength and his most alarming quality. Alexander stood, extending his hand across the desk. Welcome to Hunt Industries, Lauren. I think you're going to change everything. Lauren took his hand, feeling the warmth and certainty in his grip. I think you already changed everything last night. Then let's change it again. Alexander's smile widened. Together. 3 days later, Lauren sat in a sterile oncology suite watching clear liquid drip through an IV into her mother's arm. Liquid that cost more than their car, than their rent, than anything Lauren had ever imagined being able to afford. The Hunt Foundation had handled everything. The approval, the scheduling, the payment, even the private room that felt more like a hotel than a hospital. I still can't believe this is real, Maria Martinez said, her voice weak but steady. At 53, cancer had aged her a decade, but there was life in her eyes now, hope that hadn't been there in months. A guardian angel walks into a diner at 3 in the morning. He's not an angel, Mama. He's just a man who remembers what it was like to be desperate. Then he's a good man. Maria squeezed Lauren's hand. And you're going to work for him. With him for the foundation. Lauren still couldn't quite believe it herself. I start Monday. My brilliant daughter. Maria's eyes drifted closed, the medication making her drowsy. I always knew you were meant for more than washing dishes. Lauren sat with her mother until the treatment was complete, then helped her to the car Alexander had sent, a private medical transport with a nurse to monitor her during the drive home. Everything taken care of, everything handled. It felt like a fairy tale, and Lauren had read enough fairy tales to know they always came with a price. Monday morning, Lauren returned to the Hunt Industries building dressed in new clothes purchased with her signing bonus. Still conservative, still professional, but actually fitting, actually hers. Sarah met her at the elevators with a warm smile and a tablet full of orientation materials. Ready for the chaos? Sarah asked. Is it always chaotic? Only when Alexander is involved, which is always. The foundation offices occupied the entire 46th floor, a sprawling workspace divided between private offices, conference rooms, and an open floor plan where dozens of people worked at standing desks covered in files and screens. Sarah led Lauren through the maze, introducing her to so many people that the names blurred together. Doctors, lawyers, case managers, medical advocates, data analysts. This is impressive, Lauren said, watching a team huddle around a whiteboard covered in what looked like insurance policy flowcharts. How many families are you working with? Currently, about 400 active cases. Sarah pulled up statistics on her tablet. We screen roughly 1,000 applications a month. It's not enough. It's never enough. They reached a glass-walled office in the corner, smaller than Alexander's but still twice the size of Lauren's entire apartment. A nameplate on the door read, Lauren Martinez, Assistant Director of Family Advocacy. This is yours, Sarah said, opening the door. Alexander wanted you to have space to meet with families privately. The desk is adjustable height. There's a privacy screen for the glass if you need it, and she gestured to a small side table with a coffee maker and mini fridge. He remembered you liked coffee. Lauren walked into the office, her throat tight. Through the windows she could see Central Park, the city sprawling beyond in every direction. This is too much. It's exactly right. Alexander's voice came from the doorway. He leaned against the frame, coffee in hand, looking more relaxed than Lauren had yet seen him. Welcome to your first day. How's your mother? Tired but good. The doctors say the treatment is progressing well. Lauren turned to face him. Thank you for everything. I don't know how to. Then don't. Just do the work. Alexander pushed off the doorframe, crossing to the windows. I need to show you something. Something that's been bothering me since I made that phone call in my office the other day. Sarah's expression shifted, becoming carefully neutral. Alexander. She needs to know. Everyone on the team needs to know. He turned back to Lauren, his face grave. 2 months ago, Hunt Industries acquired a pharmaceutical company called Medicure Solutions. $4.2 billion deal. They specialize in cancer treatments, specifically, the kind of experimental therapies that insurance companies love to deny. Lauren felt a chill run down her spine. Why does that bother you? Because I've been reviewing their records, their denial rates, their profit margins. Alexander's jaw tightened. And I'm seeing patterns that make me sick. Necessary treatments denied for experimental reasons. Claims processed slowly enough that patients die before appeals are complete. Treatments approved for wealthy clients while identical cases for poor patients get rejected. That's every insurance company, Lauren said bitterly. That's what they do. Yes, but this company is mine now, which means those denials, they're happening under my name with my resources. Alexander's voice went cold. And yesterday, while reviewing the case files, I found something interesting. He pulled out his phone, swiping to a document and handed it to Lauren. She took it, scanning the text, medical records, claim forms, denial letters. It took her a moment to recognize the patient name at the top. Maria Martinez. This is my mother's file, Lauren whispered. 3 denials, all from Medicure Solutions, all processed while I was negotiating the acquisition. Alexander's voice was gentle but firm. Lauren, the company that's been denying your mother treatment, I bought it, which means I've been, inadvertently, part of the system that almost killed her. The phone slipped from Lauren's hands. Sarah caught it smoothly, her expression sympathetic but unsurprised. You knew, Lauren asked, looking between them. When you offered me the job, you knew. I didn't know when I met you at the diner. Alexander said quickly. I swear, I reviewed your mother's case after you gave me her information, and that's when I found the Medicure connection. I should have told you immediately. I'm telling you now. Lauren sank into her desk chair, her mind reeling. So what? This is guilt. You're hearing me because your company almost killed my mother. I'm hearing you because you're exactly who we need. But yes, Alexander crouched beside her chair, meeting her eyes at level. I feel responsible, not just for your mother's case, but for every case Medicure has mishandled. Every denial, every delayed treatment, every family they've pushed to the breaking point. And I need help fixing it. Fixing it how? I'm not sure yet, but I'm starting to think Medicure's problems go deeper than bad policy. I'm seeing patterns in the denials, specific treatments, specific patient demographics, specific doctors who get flagged for excessive prescription rates. He stood, packing to the windows. Something's wrong, something systematic, and I need people I trust to help me figure out what. People you trust. You've known me for 4 days. I trust that you're not getting rich off of other people's suffering. I trust that you understand what's at stake, and I trust that you'll tell me the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Alexander turned back, his expression intense. Will you help me? Lauren looked down at her hands, still scarred from washing dishes, still shaking slightly, but no longer helpless. She thought about her mother, about the 3 denials that had almost been a death sentence, about the 400 families the foundation was currently helping, and the 1,000 applications they received each month. About the thousands, more, who never even got to apply. Yes, she said, I'll help, but not because I trust you, because I don't trust that any of this is as simple as you want it to be. Alexander's smile was sad. Good, because I'm starting to think it's much worse than I imagined. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of orientation, meetings, and late nights in the office learning the foundation systems. Lauren met with families, reviewed case files, and slowly began to see the patterns Alexander had mentioned. Medicure solutions appeared again and again, denying treatments, delaying approvals, creating bureaucratic mazes that exhausted patients before they could fight back. But it was more than that. Lauren started keeping a spreadsheet, tracking every Medicure case that came through the foundation. She noted treatment types, patient demographics, referring physicians, denial reasons, and the more data she collected, the clearer the pattern became. "Look at this," she said one evening, spreading printouts across the conference room table. Alexander, Sarah, and 3 senior foundation staff members gathered around. Every pancreatic cancer patient referred by Dr. Morrison gets denied. Every single one. Same treatment protocol, same success rates, same medical necessity, but 100% denial rate. Dr. James Wright, the foundation's medical director, frowned at the documents. "That's not random. Morrison is one of the most respected oncologists in the city." "Now look at this." Lauren pulled up another set of files. Lung cancer patients in Brooklyn zip codes, 87% denial rate, but patients with identical diagnoses in Manhattan, 32% denial rate. "Geographic discrimination," Sarah breathed. "They're targeting low-income neighborhoods." "It gets worse." Lauren's hands trembled as she pulled up the final spreadsheet. "Treatment costs. For patients who get approved, Medicure charges an average of $53,000 per treatment cycle. But I compared this to wholesale costs from the manufacturer. The actual drug costs are around $8,000. Silence fell over the conference room. "They're price gouging," Alexander said finally, his voice deadly calm. "They're denying treatments to poor patients and price gouging the ones they do approve." "It's not just unethical," Dr. Wright said, his face pale. "It's potentially criminal, if they're deliberately denying medically necessary treatments to maintain profit margins." "We need proof," Sarah interrupted. "More than patterns, we need internal documents, emails, executive decisions." "I can get them," Alexander said immediately. "I own the company, I have access to everything." "If you start digging around in their systems, they'll know something's wrong," Lauren pointed out. "Whoever's running this operation, they'll cover their tracks." "Then we need someone on the inside, someone they won't suspect." Alexander's eyes met Lauren's. "Someone new to the company who has legitimate reasons to review case files." "No," Sarah said sharply. "Absolutely not. Lauren just started. We can't put her in that position." "I'll do it," Lauren said. "Lauren, my mother is alive because of this foundation, because of luck and timing and Alexander walking into a diner at 3 in the morning." Lauren's voice was steady, "Sir. How many other mothers don't get that lucky? How many families are being destroyed right now while we sit here talking about what we can't do?" Alexander studied her face for a long moment. "It could be dangerous. If you're right, if this goes high enough up the chain, there are people with billions of dollars at stake. They won't just let us expose this. Then we don't let them know what we're doing until it's too late to stop us." Lauren stood, gathering her spreadsheets. "Get me access to Medicure's systems, medical records, denial decisions, executive communications, everything. I'll find the proof." "And when you do," Dr. Wright asked quietly. Lauren's smile was cold. "Then we burn it all down." The Medicure Solutions headquarters occupied a sleek building in Midtown, all glass and steel, and the kind of aggressive minimalism that Lauren was learning meant, we have something to hide. She walked through the main entrance on a Wednesday morning, her new Hunt Industries ID badge hanging around her neck like a shield, or a target. "Cross-company audit," Alexander had explained to the Medicure executives in a terse email. "Hunt Foundation staff will be reviewing case processing procedures to ensure alignment with our ethical standards. Full cooperation expected." It was a brilliant cover. Lauren's presence was both obvious and invisible, just another corporate oversight project that would produce a useless report and change nothing. Except Alexander had given her something the Medicure executives didn't know about. Complete administrative access to every system, every database, every internal communication. "I'm breaking about 40 laws by giving you this," he'd said, handing her the access codes. "If anyone asks, you stole them." "Did I?" "Technically, yes. I left my laptop unlocked in the conference room and went to get coffee. What happened in those 3 minutes is between you and God." Now, sitting in a windowless office that smelled of old coffee and desperation, Lauren pulled up her laptop and began the real work. The Foundation's public investigation would focus on surface-level policies and procedures. Lauren's private investigation would go much, much deeper. She started with her mother's case. 3 denials, 3 different justifications, all ultimately saying the same thing: treatment not covered. But when Lauren accessed the actual decision-making system, she found something odd. The denials hadn't been processed by medical review staff. They'd been automatically flagged and routed to a special department called High-Risk Assessment. Lauren pulled up the HRA department's files. What she found made her blood run cold. High-risk assessment wasn't evaluating medical risk. They were evaluating financial risk, specifically, the risk of patients living long enough to require expensive ongoing treatment. Every case routed through HRA was analyzed by an algorithm that calculated life expectancy, treatment costs, and profit margins. Patients with low life expectancy and high treatment costs, like her mother, were automatically denied. The system had a name, labeled right there in the code, LifeSort. Lauren sat back, her hands shaking. This wasn't just bad policy. This was a deliberate, systematic program to let patients die for profit. She took screenshots, downloaded files, traced the decision tree through hundreds of cases, and everywhere she looked, she found the same pattern. LifeSort analyzing patients, calculating costs, and recommending denials for anyone whose survival was too expensive. Knock knock. Lauren jumped, spinning in her chair to find a man in his 50s standing in the doorway. He wore an expensive suit and an expression that was equal parts friendly and predatory. Sorry to startle you. Gerald Vance, Medicure COO. You must be Ms. Martinez from the Hunt Foundation. Lauren, yes. She closed her laptop screen, trying to keep her voice casual. Just reviewing some case processing protocols. Of course, Mr. Hunt wants to make sure we're up to his standards. Vance smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Find anything interesting? Just the usual bureaucratic complexity. Nothing unexpected. Good, good. Vance stepped into the office and Lauren felt the temperature drop. You know, it's funny. We've had audit teams before, compliance reviews, ethical assessments, all that corporate theater. But this is the first time someone from the Hunt Foundation has been given administrator access to our core systems. His smile sharpened. Almost like Mr. Hunt is looking for something specific. Lauren's heart hammered, but she kept her expression neutral. I'm just doing my job. I'm sure you are. Vance leaned against the doorframe, casually blocking her exit. Tell me, Ms. Martinez, how's your mother doing? Maria, isn't it? Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Such a terrible disease. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Lauren felt rage flood through her veins, burning away the fear. My mother is doing well, thanks to the treatment your company denied 3 times. The treatment that would have saved her life if someone hadn't decided she was too expensive to keep alive. Vance's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing cold calculation underneath. Medical decisions are complex. Sometimes what patients want isn't what's medically appropriate. My mother's doctor recommended that treatment. 3 independent oncologists confirmed it was her best chance. Medicure denied it because your algorithm decided she wasn't profitable enough to save. Lauren stood, meeting Vance's eyes directly. How many people has LifeSort killed? Silence. Vance's expression went completely blank. You should be careful, Ms. Martinez, making accusations about proprietary systems you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You're running an automated death panel disguised as medical review, and you're getting rich doing it. Vance pushed off the doorframe, his voice dropping to something dangerous. You have no idea what you're talking about, and if you keep digging where you don't belong, you'll find that Mr. Hunt's protection only extends so far. Accidents happen. People lose access. Stories get told about troubled employees who made up conspiracies to cover their own incompetence. Gerald. Both Lauren and Vance spun toward the door. Alexander stood there, flanked by 2 security guards and a woman in a dark suit who radiated authority. Alexander, Mr. Hunt. Vance's expression shifted rapidly through several emotions before settling on professional concern. I was just explaining to Ms. Martinez that some of our systems are confidential. Yes, I heard. From the recording device Ms. Martinez has been wearing since she entered this building. Alexander held up his phone, and Lauren realized he'd been listening to everything. I found your threat to my employee particularly interesting, almost as interesting as your knowledge of something called LifeSort, which doesn't appear anywhere in the official documentation you provided during our acquisition. Vance's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Federal regulations require pharmaceutical companies to maintain complete and honest records. Deliberately concealing systematic denial programs during an acquisition is fraud. The woman in the dark suit stepped forward, showing a badge. Special Agent Rebecca Torres, FBI Healthcare Fraud Division. Gerald Vance, we need to talk about LifeSort. What happened next moved with the smooth efficiency of a long-planned operation. More agents appeared, beginning a formal search of the building. Vance was escorted to a conference room, his threats replaced by demands for lawyers. And Lauren found herself sitting in Alexander's car, watching through tinted windows as Medicure's headquarters filled with federal investigators. You knew, she said finally. This wasn't just about finding evidence. You already had enough to bring in the FBI. Alexander nodded, his expression grim. We've been investigating Medicure for 6 months, since before I bought the company. I knew something was wrong. The numbers didn't make sense. The denial rates were statistically impossible unless they were deliberate. but I couldn't prove it without access to their internal systems. So you bought the entire company. $4.2 billion for the evidence to destroy it. Yes. Alexander turned to face her. Your mother's case is what confirmed it was real. When I saw those 3 denials, all from the same automated system, all using the exact same bureaucratic language, I knew. This was bigger than bad policy. This was criminal. You used me, Lauren said, but there was no heat in it. Just exhaustion and a strange sense of relief. The job offer, the foundation access, sending me to Medicure, you needed someone they wouldn't suspect. I gave you a choice. You chose to fight. Alexander's voice was gentle. And you found what we needed faster than I imagined. That life-sort algorithm, that's the smoking gun, Lauren. Proof of systematic denial based on profitability rather than medical necessity. When this goes public, people will know I was part of it, that I helped bring down my own employer's company. Lauren laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. The media will have a field day. Yes, they will. Alexander reached across the car, his hand hovering near hers but not quite touching. Which is why I'm giving you another choice. We can keep you out of this. The FBI has everything they need. You can go back to the foundation, work quietly, and pretend none of this happened. Lord. Or you can stand with me, testify about what you found. Help me expose every executive who knew about life-sort. Make sure this never happens to another family. His dark eyes were intense. It won't be easy. There will be threats, media scrutiny, people trying to discredit you. But together, we can change the entire system. Lauren looked out at the Medicure building, thinking about her mother's 3 denials. About the spreadsheet full of cases where LifeSort had decided people were too expensive to save. About all the families who'd never gotten lucky enough to meet a billionaire at 3 a.m. I want to testify, she said. I want everyone to know what they did. Then we do this together. This time, Alexander did take her hand, squeezing gently. Whatever comes next. What came next was chaos. The investigation exploded across every major news network within hours. Pharmaceutical giant used death algorithm to deny cancer treatments, screamed the headlines. Hunt Industries CEO exposes massive fraud in own company. Waitress turned whistleblower takes down billion-dollar conspiracy. Lauren's face was everywhere. Security footage from the diner, her employee photo from Hunt Industries, paparazzi shots of her entering federal buildings for depositions. Her story became public property. The struggling daughter who'd worked nights to save her dying mother, only to discover the company denying her mother treatment was owned by the man who'd offered to help her. It was a narrative too perfect for the media to resist. And narratives, Lauren learned quickly, didn't care much about truth. Lauren Martinez, hero or opportunist, asked one cable news segment. Did this waitress manipulate a billionaire's guilt, or did she genuinely help expose fraud? Another questioned whether the relationship between Lauren and Alexander was appropriate, given the power imbalance and suspicious timing. The worst part was the lawyers. Medicure's defense team came after Lauren with everything they had, questioning her credentials, her motives, her mental state. They painted her as a disgruntled employee who'd fabricated evidence to get revenge for her mother's denied treatment. They suggested she'd seduced Alexander into believing a conspiracy that didn't exist. They're trying to break you, Sarah warned during one particularly brutal deposition. They're trying to make you angry enough to say something they can use. But Lauren had spent months watching her mother slowly die, while insurance representatives politely explained why she deserved it. She knew how to swallow rage and smile. The turning point came 3 weeks into the investigation. Agent Torres obtained a warrant for Medicure executive emails, and what she found went far beyond LifeSort. The algorithm hadn't been developed by rogue employees or implemented by mistake. It had been designed, approved, and celebrated at the highest levels of the company. We've increased quarterly profits by 34% through strategic denial optimization. Read one email from the former CEO to the board of directors. LifeSort allows us to focus resources on patients with favorable cost-to-survival ratios while minimizing exposure to high-risk cases. High-risk cases. That's what her mother had been. A number in an algorithm, a cost-to-survival ratio, and exposure to minimize. Lauren testified before a grand jury, her voice steady as she walked them through every detail of what she'd found. She explained LifeSort's logic, showed them the denial patterns, pointed to the executives who'd known and approved. And she told them about her mother, about 3 denials, about working through the night, about the moment she'd realized the company denying her mother treatment was owned by the man trying to help her. What did you feel, the prosecutor asked, when you discovered Mr. Hunt's company was responsible for your mother's suffering? Lauren looked at Alexander, sitting in the gallery with an expression of carefully controlled fury. I felt like the system was rigged. Like no matter how hard I worked, no matter how much I sacrificed, the people with power would always win. And then, her voice caught. And then I realized I'd been given power too. access to their systems, protection from retaliation, resources to fight back. So I stopped being a victim and became a witness. The grand jury indicted 7 Medicure executives on charges including healthcare fraud, conspiracy, and reckless endangerment. The company itself faced billions in fines and civil litigation from the thousands of families affected by LifeSort's denials. And Lauren Martinez, former waitress and current whistleblower, became the face of healthcare reform. The night the indictments came down, Alexander invited Lauren to his apartment. The first time she'd seen where he actually lived. She'd expected something ostentatious, a penthouse filled with expensive art and status symbols. Instead, she found a surprisingly modest space in the West Village, warmly lit and cluttered with books, family photos, and what looked like half-finished engineering projects. "This is where you live?" she asked, surprised. "The penthouse is for business meetings and impressing investors. This is home." Alexander poured 2 glasses of wine, handing her one. "We won, Lauren. Not completely, not yet, but we won the first battle. Medicure is finished. LifeSort is exposed. The industry is scrambling to prove their review processes aren't automated death panels. And how many people died while LifeSort was operational? How many families lost everything because an algorithm decided their loved ones weren't profitable enough to save?" Lauren took the wine but didn't drink. 7 executives go to prison. That's not justice. That's barely accountability. "No," Alexander agreed quietly. "It's not justice. Justice would be bringing back everyone who died. Justice would be preventing this from happening in the first place. But it's a start. And we're not stopping here." He pulled out his laptop, showing her a document he'd been working on. New protocols for the entire pharmaceutical division. Every treatment denial reviewed by an actual doctor. Every high-cost case gets automatic appeal with patient advocacy. Every algorithm gets audited by independent ethics boards. And he scrolled to the bottom. Every patient denied treatment receives a detailed explanation with clear appeal instructions, written in plain language instead of bureaucratic garbage. Lauren read through the document, her throat tight. "You're rewriting the entire system." "I'm trying, and I need your help." Alexander turned the laptop toward her. "The foundation is expanding. I want you to lead it, not as assistant director, as executive director. Full authority over policies, budget, staffing. Make it what it needs to be." "Alexander, you found LifeSort in 2 weeks. You testified with a courage I've never seen. You made me remember why I started this foundation in the first place." His voice was raw, honest. "I trust you to do what's right even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." Lauren set down her wine, her hands trembling. "Why me? You could hire anyone. Someone with actual experience, credentials, connections." "Because those people didn't work overnight shifts to save their dying mother. They didn't risk everything to expose a conspiracy. They didn't." Alexander stopped, and when he continued, his voice was softer. "They didn't teach me that wealth without purpose is just elaborate emptiness. You did that. In a diner at 3 in the morning, you reminded me what actually matters. I didn't do anything except exist at the right time. You fought. When everything was hopeless, when every rational choice was to give up, you kept fighting. And when you had power, you used it to help others fight too." Alexander moved closer, his intensity focused entirely on her. "That's who I want leading this foundation. Someone who understands what we're really fighting for." Lauren looked at this man who'd walked into her life and changed everything, who'd seen her at her lowest and somehow decided she was exactly who he needed. And she realized something terrifying. She was falling for him. For his passion, his determination, the way he wielded wealth like a weapon against systems that crushed people like her mother. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll do it, but on one condition." "Anything." "No more secrets. No more investigations where I'm just a pawn. If we're partners in this, if I'm going to lead your foundation, then we're actually partners. Equal, honest." Alexander's smile was genuine, transforming his entire face. "Deal. No more secrets." He was lying. Not intentionally, perhaps. But there were secrets Alexander Hunt hadn't told her, wounds he'd buried so deep that even he didn't remember they were bleeding. Lauren discovered the first one 2 weeks later, while reviewing the foundation's financial records. She'd been looking for budget projections, trying to plan for the expansion Alexander wanted, when she found a series of payments that didn't make sense. Large transfers, 6 figures each, going to an account labeled personal medical expenses. She almost ignored it. Rich people had expensive doctors, this was probably nothing, but something about the timing bothered her. The payments had started 3 years ago, right when Alexander founded the foundation, and they'd increased dramatically in the past 6 months. Lauren did what she'd learned to do. She investigated. The account belonged to a private care facility in Westchester, the Greenwood Extended Care Center, a high-end nursing home specializing in long-term patients with chronic conditions. Lauren called, identifying herself as assistant director, soon to be executive director, of the Hunt Foundation, and asked if they had any patients associated with Alexander Hunt. "Yes," the receptionist said after a moment. We have Mr. Hunt's father, Robert. He's been with us for 3 years. Such a devoted son, visiting every week without fail. Lauren's blood ran cold. Alexander had never mentioned his father. Never once in all their conversations had he indicated his father was alive. She confronted him that evening in his office after the rest of the team had gone home. Who is Robert Hunt? Alexander looked up from his laptop, his expression shifting through confusion to understanding to resignation in the space of a heartbeat. You found the payments. You told me no more secrets. This isn't a secret, it's... Alexander closed the laptop, suddenly looking exhausted. It's complicated. Try me. He was silent for a long moment, staring out at the city lights. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. My father left when I was 17. My mother was already sick, the medical bills were piling up, and he just walked away. Said he couldn't handle it, couldn't watch her die. So he left, and I dropped out of high school to work full-time at Murphy's Diner, and my mother died 6 months later without him ever coming back. Lauren waited, sensing there was more. I didn't see him again for 15 years. Didn't want to. And then one day the Greenwood Center called. Robert Hunt had been admitted with early-onset Alzheimer's. He was only 63 and the disease was progressing rapidly. He had no other family, no insurance, no way to pay for care. And the center wanted to know if I, his estranged son, the billionaire CEO he'd abandoned, would be willing to cover the costs. And you said yes. I said yes. Alexander's laugh was bitter. Because I remembered what it felt like to lose my mother because we couldn't afford treatment. I remembered begging doctors, pleading with insurance companies, working myself to exhaustion for money that was never enough. And I couldn't, even after everything he'd done, I couldn't let him die alone and confused in a public facility that didn't have the resources to help him. So you pay for his care, you visit him every week, and you never told anyone. What would I tell them? That I'm a hypocrite? That I built a foundation to help people like my mother while supporting the man who abandoned her? Alexander turned to face Lauren, and she saw real pain in his eyes. Every week I sit with him, and he doesn't know who I am. He thinks I'm his nurse or a friend or sometimes just a stranger. And I keep paying, keep visiting because somewhere in my broken logic, it feels like penance. Like if I can save him, maybe I'm not the vengeful, angry person he made me. Lauren crossed to him, taking his hands in hers. You're not a hypocrite. You're human. You're doing what I did, fighting to save someone even when they don't deserve it because love doesn't have logic. He doesn't love me. I'm not sure he ever did. But you love him, or at least you love who he could have been, and that's enough. Lauren squeezed his hands. No more secrets, Alexander, but this isn't a secret, it's just pain you've been carrying alone. He pulled her into an embrace then, sudden and desperate, and Lauren felt him trembling. I don't know how to do this, he whispered into her hair. How to be the person who helps everyone else while falling apart inside. You don't do it alone, Lauren said. That's what partnership means. You help me carry my pain, I help you carry yours. They stood like that for a long time. Two people who'd found each other in the chaos of 3 a.m. desperation, now holding each other through a different kind of darkness. And neither of them noticed the photographer across the street, camera pressed to the window, capturing every moment. The photograph hit the tabloids at 6 a.m., accompanied by a headline designed to destroy. Billionaire and former waitress, love story or corporate scandal. Lauren woke to her phone exploding with notifications. Text messages, emails, calls from numbers she didn't recognize, all asking the same questions in variations of outrage and prurient curiosity. Was she sleeping with Alexander Hunt? Had their relationship started before she was hired? Was the entire Medicure investigation a cover for an inappropriate office romance? The photograph showed them in Alexander's office, embracing, her face pressed against his chest. Out of context, it looked intimate, romantic, exactly the kind of scandal that would overshadow everything they'd accomplished. Lauren called Alexander immediately. He answered on the first ring, his voice tight with fury. I'm handling it. My lawyers are. It doesn't matter what your lawyers do. The damage is done. Lauren looked at the photo again, feeling sick. They're going to use this to discredit everything. The investigation, my testimony, the foundation. They'll say I manipulated you, that we faked evidence, that this was all just a conspiracy between an opportunistic waitress and a billionaire with a savior complex. Alexander's voice was bitter. Yes, that's exactly what they'll say. Medicure's defense team is probably celebrating right now. Lauren closed her eyes, thinking through the implications. The criminal case against Medicure executives was solid. The evidence was overwhelming. The indictments already filed. But civil litigation, the thousands of families suing for damages, their case depended on Lauren's credibility as a whistleblower. And this photograph made her look like exactly what the defense claimed, an opportunist with ulterior motives. I need to resign, she said quietly. From the foundation, from everything. If I'm not connected to you, the scandal dies. Absolutely not. Alexander's voice was sharp. We don't run, we don't hide, and we sure as hell don't let them win by making us choose between our work and... He stopped. "And what?" Lauren asked, her heart pounding. "And whatever this is becoming between us." Alexander's voice softened. "Because it is something, Lauren, isn't it?" She thought about that moment in his office, when he'd pulled her close and let himself be vulnerable. About weeks of late-night strategy sessions that turned into conversations about everything except work. About the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching, with a mixture of admiration and something deeper. "Yes," she admitted, "but it doesn't matter, not compared to what we're trying to do." "It matters to me." The simple declaration hung between them, heavy with implications. "We can't," Lauren said, even as part of her desperately wanted to argue otherwise. "The power imbalance, the scrutiny, the way it looks, is exactly what they want us to think, that people like you don't deserve people like me, that relationships across class lines are automatically suspect, that I couldn't possibly care about you for who you are, only for what you represent." Alexander's voice was fierce. "But I do care about you, Lauren. I care about your courage, your integrity, the way you see through all the corporate bullshit to what actually matters. I care that you make me want to be better than I am. And I'm tired of pretending that's inappropriate just because we met when you were desperate, and I had resources." Lauren felt tears threatening. "But if this becomes public, then we control the narrative, together. We tell our story, the truth, before they can twist it into something ugly." Alexander paused. "But only if that's what you want. If this is one-sided, if I've misread everything, tell me now and we'll never speak of it again." "You haven't misread anything," Lauren whispered. "I've been falling for you since you offered me $1,000 just to have coffee. Maybe before that. Maybe from the moment you saw me washing dishes at 3 in the morning and decided I mattered. You matter more than you know. But what we're building matters more. The foundation, the investigation, the families who need help. I won't let a romance destroy that. Then we'll be careful, strategic, professional in public, honest in private, and if it becomes too much, if the scrutiny threatens the foundation, we'll make the hard choice." Alexander's voice was steady, certain. "But Lauren, I'm not giving you up without a fight. Not to tabloids, not to lawyers, and definitely not to people who think compassion and love can't coexist in the same story." Lauren smiled despite everything. "When did you become so certain about this?" "About 3 seconds after I walked into that diner and saw you destroying yourself trying to save someone else. I just didn't know how to say it until now." They went public deliberately, carefully, on their own terms. Not with a press release or official statement, but with an interview on a major news program known for serious journalism. Lauren sat beside Alexander on a stage, facing a journalist who'd built a career on asking uncomfortable questions, and told their story from beginning to end. "I met Lauren Martinez at 3 a.m. in a diner where I used to work," Alexander said. "She was exhausted, desperate, and working unpaid hours to afford her mother's cancer treatment that my company was denying. I offered help because I'd been in her position, because I knew what it felt like to watch someone die slowly, because the system decides they're not worth saving." "And you, Ms. Martinez," the journalist asked, "did you know Mr. Hunt owned Medicure Solutions when you accepted his help?" "No, I found out weeks later after I'd already started working for the foundation, and my first reaction was anger, that the man who'd saved my mother had also been indirectly responsible for almost killing her." Lauren's voice was steady. "But then I realized that's how the system works. Good people participate in bad systems without knowing the full scope of the damage. And when they discover the truth, they have a choice: ignore it or fight to change it. Some critics suggest your relationship with Mr. Hunt compromises your credibility as a whistleblower. Those critics want to focus on whether a former waitress is allowed to have feelings for a billionaire CEO, rather than addressing the fact that a pharmaceutical company used an algorithm to let patients die for profit." Lauren leaned forward. "Yes, Alexander and I have grown close. We've worked together, fought together, and supported each other through an investigation that threatened both our lives. Is that inappropriate? Or is it what happens when two people who care about the same things find each other in the chaos? The timing is certainly convenient. The timing is 3 years of Alexander building a foundation, 6 months of FBI investigation before I ever met him, and 2 weeks of me finding evidence that confirmed what everyone already suspected. The Medicure conspiracy isn't about me and Alexander. It's about a system that values profit over human life. And if people want to focus on our relationship instead of that truth," Lauren's voice hardened, "then they're part of the problem." The interview went viral, not because of scandal or controversy, but because of the raw honesty they'd brought to the conversation. People saw two individuals who refused to be ashamed of caring about each other while fighting for something bigger than themselves. But not everyone was convinced. Medicure's defense team doubled down, arguing that Lauren and Alexander's relationship proved the investigation was biased. They filed motions to have Lauren's testimony excluded, claiming she'd fabricated evidence to help her romantic partner's vendetta against the pharmaceutical industry. It was Special Agent Torres who shut that argument down definitively. "Ms. Martinez's relationship with Mr. Hunt is irrelevant to the evidence," she testified before the federal judge overseeing the case. LifeSort exists. We have the source code, the executive emails approving its implementation, and documented cases of patients being denied treatment based on the algorithm's recommendations. Ms. Martinez discovered this evidence through legitimate investigation, and Mr. Hunt provided access because he suspected fraud within his own company. Their personal relationship doesn't change those facts. The judge agreed, denying the defense's motion, but the damage to Lauren's reputation had been done. She was no longer just the whistleblower who exposed LifeSort. She was the waitress who dated her billionaire boss. Every article about the Medicure case included speculation about their relationship, as if that was the story rather than systematic fraud. "I hate this," Lauren said one night, scrolling through the latest round of tabloid coverage in Alexander's apartment. They'd stopped hiding their relationship after the interview. If people were going to speculate anyway, they might as well be honest. "Everything we've accomplished, and they're still obsessing over whether I'm a gold digger. Then let's give them something else to obsess over." Alexander pulled out his laptop, opening a document he'd been working on. "I'm restructuring Hunt Industries, breaking the pharmaceutical division into a separate, non-profit entity focused exclusively on affordable treatment access. No profit margins, no shareholder pressure, no incentive to deny care. Just medicine for people who need it." Lauren stared at the proposal. "You'd give up billions in potential revenue." "I'd stop being part of a system that kills people for money." "Yes." Alexander's smile was fierce. "They want to make this about you and me, about whether our relationship is appropriate. Fine. Let them watch us burn down the entire industry while we're at it." "You're insane." "I'm in love with a woman who worked through the night to save her dying mother and then brought down a corporate conspiracy. If that doesn't earn a little insanity, what does?" Lauren froze. "What did you just say?" Alexander set down the laptop, turning to face her fully. "I'm in love with you. I've been for weeks, maybe months. I'm in love with your courage and your anger and the way you refuse to accept that suffering is inevitable. I'm in love with how you see through all my money and power to the person underneath, the scared 19-year-old who lost his mother and never really recovered." His voice was raw, honest. "And I know the timing is terrible and the scrutiny is overwhelming, and this complicates everything we're trying to build. But it's the truth, and we promised each other no more secrets." Lauren felt tears streaming down her face. "I love you too. I love that you saw me at my worst and somehow decided I was worth saving. I love that you use your wealth like a weapon against injustice instead of a shield against reality. I love that you're willing to destroy your own company rather than participate in killing people for profit." She laughed through the tears. "And yes, the timing is terrible, and yes, this complicates everything. But I'm tired of pretending this isn't real." Alexander pulled her close, and this time when they kissed, there was no photographer to capture it. Just two people who'd found each other in desperation and chosen each other in the aftermath. The Medicure trial began on a cold morning in late November. 7 executives faced charges of healthcare fraud, conspiracy, racketeering, and criminally negligent homicide. The last charge added after investigators discovered that at least 43 patients had died directly because of LifeSort denials. Lauren testified for 3 days, walking the jury through every detail of what she'd found. The algorithm's logic, the executive emails, the pattern of denials targeting low-income neighborhoods and patients with expensive treatment needs. She showed them her mother's case, explained the 3 denials, and the miracle of Alexander walking into a diner at exactly the right moment. "But that's what it took," she said, her voice carrying through the courtroom. "A miracle, luck, being in the right place at the right time with a billionaire who happened to remember what desperation felt like. How many families don't get that lucky? How many mothers and fathers and children died because they couldn't afford to be saved?" The defense tried to break her on cross-examination, questioning her credentials, her motives, her relationship with Alexander. But Lauren had learned something during those overnight shifts washing dishes. You can't shame someone who's already survived the worst thing they could imagine. "Yes, I love Alexander Hunt," she said calmly when the defense attorney implied she'd fabricated evidence for personal gain. "I also exposed a conspiracy that his company participated in, testified against executives he trusted, and helped destroy billions in shareholder value. If I was motivated by romance, I did a terrible job protecting my boyfriend's interests." The courtroom erupted in laughter. Even the judge cracked a smile. Alexander testified after her, walking the jury through his investigation, his decision to buy Medicure, and the moment he'd realized his own company was killing people. "I built a foundation to help families like Lauren's," he said. "I spent 3 years thinking I was making a difference, and then I discovered that my other hand, my pharmaceutical division, was creating the very problems I was trying to solve. That's not irony, that's systematic corruption, and it needed to end." The trial lasted 6 weeks. The jury deliberated for 4 days. And when they returned with guilty verdicts on all major charges, Lauren felt something she hadn't allowed herself since this all started: hope that the system could actually change. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for February, deliberately timed to coincide with the anniversary of the night Alexander had walked into Murphy's diner. Lauren stood in the courthouse hallway, watching families of life-sort victims gather to deliver impact statements, and felt the weight of everything they'd accomplished. "Nervous?" Alexander asked, appearing beside her with 2 cups of coffee. "Terrified. What if this isn't enough? What if they serve a few years and then get out and do it all over again?" "Then we keep fighting, that's what we do." Alexander handed her a coffee, his fingers brushing hers. "But Lauren, this is enough. Because of you, because of what you found, 43 families got justice. Thousands more will get the treatments they need. And the entire industry is scrambling to prove they're not running automated death panels. That's victory. It doesn't bring back the people who died." "No, but it saves the people who haven't yet." He squeezed her hand. "That's all we can do. Save the ones we can and remember the ones we couldn't." They watched as family after family entered the courtroom. Mothers who'd lost children, children who'd lost parents, spouses who'd been left alone because an algorithm decided their loved ones weren't profitable enough to save. Each story was a knife to the heart, a reminder of the cost of corporate greed. When it was Lauren's turn to speak, she stood at the podium and looked directly at the 7 defendants. "My mother survived," she said quietly, "because of luck and timing and a stranger's compassion. She's alive today because Alexander Hunt walked into a diner at 3 in the morning and decided to help. But I know, we all know, that I'm the exception, that most families don't get miracles. They get form letters explaining why their insurance doesn't cover the treatment that could save their loved one's life. They get automated denials generated by algorithms designed to maximize profit by minimizing care." She pulled out a photograph, her mother in the hospital, hooked up to the experimental treatment that Medicare had denied 3 times. "This is Maria Martinez. She's 63 years old. She loves gardening and terrible reality TV and her daughter, even when that daughter is too stubborn for her own good. LifeSort decided she wasn't worth saving. You," she gestured to the defendants. "You approved that algorithm. You celebrated its success. You got rich while people like my mother died." Lauren's voice hardened. "I hope you spend every day of your sentence remembering their faces. I hope you can't sleep at night thinking about the children who grew up without parents, the parents who buried children, the families destroyed because you decided profit mattered more than human life. And I hope that when you get out, if you get out, you spend the rest of your lives trying to make amends you'll never fully achieve." She stepped down and Alexander was there to catch her as her legs gave out. "You did it," he whispered. "You spoke for all of them." The judge sentenced each defendant to the maximum penalty allowed by law, between 8 and 15 years, plus millions in fines and permanent bans from working in healthcare. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. 6 months later, Lauren stood in the middle of a newly renovated building in Brooklyn, watching volunteers set up for the grand opening of the Hunt Foundation's first community health center. Free cancer screenings, treatment navigation, insurance advocacy, all available to anyone who walked through the doors, regardless of income or insurance status. "It's perfect," she said, watching a mother and daughter enter for one of the first appointments. "This is what we should have been doing from the beginning. We couldn't do this before. We had to burn down the system first." Alexander appeared beside her, dressed in jeans and a Hunt Foundation t-shirt instead of his usual suit. "Now we rebuild. Better." They'd spent the past months working 18-hour days, transforming the foundation from a small nonprofit into a nationwide network of advocacy and care. The restructured pharmaceutical division provided medications at cost. The community health centers offered free services in underserved neighborhoods. And Lauren's Family Advisory Board, survivors and families affected by treatment denials, ensured every policy was designed with their needs in mind. "Your mother's here," Alexander said, gesturing toward the entrance. Maria Martinez walked in with the confidence of someone who'd beaten impossible odds. 2 years cancer-free, she'd become an activist in her own right, speaking at medical conferences and lobbying for healthcare reform. She spotted Lauren and smiled, and Lauren felt her heart swell. "Mija," Maria said, pulling her into a hug, "look at what you've built." "What we've built," Lauren corrected, "all of us. From washing dishes at 3 in the morning to this. Your grandmother would be so proud." "I'm proud of her." Alexander joined them and Maria immediately pulled him into a hug as well. They become close during her treatment, bonding over terrible hospital coffee and shared stubbornness. "She changed my entire life." "You changed each other," Maria said wisely. "That's how real partnerships work." The center opened to a crowd of hundreds, community members, patients, media, and advocates who'd fought alongside them. Lauren gave a speech about justice and compassion, and the power of refusing to accept that suffering was inevitable. Alexander announced a new $500 million fund dedicated to eliminating medical debt for families denied treatment. And at the end of the night, when everyone had left and they stood alone in the empty center, Alexander took Lauren's hand. "Come with me. I want to show you something." He drove them back to Manhattan to Murphy's Diner, the place where everything had started. It was 2:47 a.m. when they walked through the door, and Eddie greeted them with a knowing smile. "Figured you two would show up eventually," he said. "Coffee?" "Please." Alexander led Lauren to their booth, the same corner where they'd sat that first night. "Do you remember what you said to me, right here when I asked why you were working through the night?" "I said my mother was dying, and I couldn't save her. And I said I'd help, that I knew people, that I could make the system work for you." Alexander pulled a small box from his pocket and Lauren's breath caught. "What I didn't say, what I didn't know yet, was that you would save me right back, that you'd remind me what wealth was actually for, that you'd show me how to use power as a weapon against injustice instead of a shield against reality." He opened the box, revealing a simple ring. No massive diamond, just elegant silver with a small inscription. 3 a.m. "Lauren Martinez," he said softly, "will you marry me? Will you spend your life fighting beside me, building something better, refusing to accept that the world has to be the way it is?" Lauren looked at this man who'd walked into her life at her lowest moment and somehow seen her highest potential, who'd given her power and trusted her to use it, who'd fallen in love with her courage and her anger and her refusal to give up. "Yes," she said, and then she was laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Alexander slipped the ring onto her finger, and Eddie cheered from behind the counter. They kissed there in the booth, at 3 a.m., exactly where their story had begun. "What happens now?" Lauren asked when they finally pulled apart. "Now we keep going, keep building, keep fighting." Alexander's smile was fierce. "Together." "Together," Lauren agreed. They left the diner hand in hand, stepping out into the pre-dawn Manhattan streets. The city was quiet, peaceful, waiting for the day to begin. And Lauren thought about all the people out there right now, working overnight shifts, desperate and exhausted, trying to save someone they loved. "We need more community centers," she said, "in every city, every neighborhood, so that next time someone is working at 3 in the morning trying to afford treatment, they have somewhere to go, someone to help." Alexander squeezed her hand. "We'll build them, however many it takes. It's going to take years, decades maybe. Good thing we're in this for the long haul." Lauren looked at the ring on her finger glinting in the streetlights. She thought about her mother, alive and thriving, about the families they'd helped, the system they'd exposed, the justice they'd fought for, about the man beside her who'd chosen to use his wealth as a weapon rather than a shield. And she thought, sometimes fairy tales do come true, not the ones with magic and perfection, but the ones built on choice and courage and refusing to accept that suffering is inevitable. The ones that start at 3 a.m., with a stranger walking through a door, and a woman too desperate to know she was about to change the world. And on a quiet Tuesday evening, Lauren and Alexander stood in front of their closest friends and family in a small ceremony at Murphy's Diner. Eddie officiated, because of course he did. Maria cried. Sarah made a toast about unlikely partnerships and 3 a.m. miracles. "Do you take this man?" Eddie asked Lauren, barely suppressing a grin. "To be your partner in fighting systemic injustice, building impossible things, and generally making the world better than you found it?" "I do," Lauren said, squeezing Alexander's hands. "And do you take this woman?" Eddie turned to Alexander. "To be your partner in all the same things, plus making sure you don't forget where you came from?" "I do," Alexander said, his voice thick with emotion. "Then by the power vested in me by a questionable online ordination and 17 years of knowing both of you, I pronounce you married. Kiss already, we're all crying." They kissed as the diner erupted in applause, and Lauren thought, this is what victory looks like. Not perfect, not easy, but real, built on choice and courage and showing up for each other every single day. Later, after the celebration, she and Alexander stood outside the diner looking up at the sky. It was 3:07 a.m., the exact time he'd first walked through that door 2 years ago. "What would have happened if you hadn't come in that night?" Lauren asked softly. "I don't know, maybe nothing. Maybe everything would have happened exactly as it did, just slower." Alexander pulled her close. "But I'm glad I didn't have to find out. I'm glad I walked in. I'm glad I saw you. I'm glad I got to be part of your story." "Our story," Lauren corrected. "We wrote this one together." Above them, the city stretched toward dawn, full of people fighting their own battles, working their own overnight shifts, searching for their own 3 a.m. miracles. And somewhere out there, Lauren knew, the foundation they'd built was helping someone find hope. That was enough. That was everything. They walked away from the diner hand in hand, ready for whatever came next, together. What would you have done if you were Lauren? Working yourself to exhaustion, watching your mother die slowly, knowing the system was designed to break you, would you have kept fighting? Or would you have given up? This story reminds us that justice isn't automatic. It doesn't just happen. Real change requires people who refuse to accept that suffering is inevitable, people like Lauren who expose corruption, people like Alexander who use their power for something beyond profit, people like you who watch stories like this and decide, Enough. Smash that like button. Show the algorithm that stories about real justice and systemic change matter more than celebrity gossip and shallow content. Comment below with justice served if you believe healthcare should be a right, not a profit center. Let's build a community of people who refuse to accept the status quo. Share your own stories, times you fought the system, times someone helped you, times you wished someone had. Subscribe and hit that notification bell, because Lauren and Alexander's story isn't unique. Every single day, people are fighting battles just like this, exposing corruption, standing up to power, refusing to let others suffer alone. And I'm going to bring you their stories, real accounts of courage, resistance, and the small moments that change everything. Drop a comment, hit like, subscribe now, because the next story might be about someone you know, it might even be about you. And when your moment comes, you'll want to know you're not alone. The fight for justice doesn't end with one verdict or one story. It continues every single day, with every person who refuses to accept that things have to stay broken. Are you ready to join us?